What's up, guys? So today I want to talk about cost of living. I get this question quite often, and I'm going to break this down into two separate videos. I'm going to do about the cost of living when we first moved here when we were renting versus when we actually live in our own home. But one key note to remember is I'm going to do the numbers based on today's exchange rate, which is right here. And before we get started, just keep in mind that this rate obviously fluctuates daily, but it should give you a general idea of what to expect. And on top of that, I would really appreciate if you guys could subscribe. I'm trying to grow this part of my social media platform or my social media presence, and YouTube would be a good way for me to monetize. So I'd appreciate if you guys could like and subscribe. That'd be awesome. All right, so getting started. Now, obviously, this is going to be related to us and our expenses only. Every single person is different. So it's me, my wife, and my two young kids. So there are certain things that we won't have expenses for, or there are things that we have expenses for, like kids' activities and schooling and stuff. That might not apply to you, so just keep that in mind. One thing to also keep in mind is, yes, people think Mexico is affordable or it's cheap or whatever. Yes and no. Certain things are cheaper. The general cost of living is definitely less than if you were to compare to Canada or the US, but there are certain things that are significantly more. So when you factor in things like cars and electronics, for example, imported goods, all of those things cost significantly more. So just keep that in mind. Now, to get started, when we first moved here, we rented that 3-bedroom, 3-bath condo. That was 25,000 pesos a month. It included internet, but we had to pay for water and we had to pay for electricity separately. For the 3 months we lived there, our water bill was about 1,000 pesos a month, which is a little higher. And from my understanding, it's because the building we were in was zoned a commercial building and it works a little differently and it costs a little bit more. So that was an exception. So it's generally gonna be a lot cheaper for most people. When we first moved to Mexico, we were trying to keep our electricity or air conditioning usage down to acclimatize. Hindsight, that was kind of a ridiculous idea. However, our electricity bill is billed every 2 months. Our bill was around 2,800 to 3,000 pesos for the 2 months. So if you break it down to monthly, it's this much, which I think is actually pretty affordable. We only really ran the air conditioning at night, and the air conditioning will be your biggest suck on electricity. And then we have internet, which I said was included. Our weekly grocery bill. So when we first moved, that was significantly more because a lot of times we found that we just didn't have the items or the utensils or the cooking gear that we needed to actually properly make food. So we ate out a lot more. We bought a lot more takeout or ready-made meals. Generally, we would meal prep for the entire week and we do one big shopping haul, and then probably every 2-3 days we're going to the grocery store anyways to get other random things. Fruits and meats don't last as long here. I don't recommend freezing meats because a lot of times you'll get power outages and then you could lose all that meat. So it's generally better to just consume what you buy quicker than trying to store it all. So our general grocery bill for the once a week big haul was around 2,500 pesos. That seems pretty high, but again, keep in mind there was a lot of things when we first moved here that we didn't have that we had to buy. So things like spices and condiments we had to buy just because we didn't have those things. So generally it was higher. Now living in our house and we actually can have a pantry and store things, it's come down a little bit, but we'll get to that in the next video. So that was our weekly budget of a big haul, was around, let's say 2,500 pesos. And then we'd probably go back every 2-3 days to get like fruits and other stuff. And we were probably spending another 500 pesos, 600 pesos there. So I'd say overall our weekly grocery bill was probably around 3,000 pesos is pretty good average every week, which is that much. And then eating out and taking takeout, we probably go maybe once every other week to a sit-down restaurant. And you can, for our family, and just nowhere fancy, we're probably spending about 1,000 to 1,100 pesos. So let's say that much every month. And then for takeout stuff or ready-made meals, we're probably spending another 1,500 or so. So it would be that much. And then the other expenses that we have aside from rent, utilities, and food was taxi. So we didn't have a car. We would probably cab it somewhere maybe 3-4 times a week. And on average, we were probably spending about 500 pesos a week on taxi. So total, another 2,000 pesos a month. I think that's on the higher end. We weren't actually cabbing that much, but that's just generally to be safe. Since we were downtown, we were kind of walking everywhere. Also, water for drinking. I was getting a delivery service. A guy would come and deliver it, and I think we were doing it weekly, and we were getting about 3 garrafons, those big plastic 20-liter jugs. That was 120 pesos with tip. Now, when you're first getting here, if you don't have a jug, you have to buy them, and they're about 100 pesos each, which is the deposit, so you can return them anywhere and get your money back when you're done with it. But in general, if you have it, then getting it delivered, it was costing about, let's say with tip, 30 pesos per, which I think was a pretty good deal. Because if I go to OXXO right now, just to do the exchange, I'm paying about 44 pesos and I have to do it myself. I know there are other fill-up stations in the city that I saw that you can do it yourself, and it's about 20 pesos to fill it yourself, but again, we don't have a car, it was pretty far, and that was just not really a realistic option for us. The kids weren't in school yet because they hadn't started yet, so we didn't have any schooling bills or kids' activities because we were just kind of figuring things out and trying to do things locally and just kind of getting the lay of the land. And then we did have our cell phone bills, but that is still Canadian phone numbers, so that is about $213 a month Canadian. That's obviously on the high end, and that's Canadian pricing. But we have a pretty good plan. That's for both of our phones. So we get something like 500 gigs a month and unlimited Canada, US, and Mexico calling, texting, and data. That's kind of why we have it. And because we just moved here, I didn't want to give up my Canadian phone. And I don't know if I ever will yet because everything is tied to it for security stuff or checks or whatever. Like everything online is connected to my phone number. So I don't even know how to even get rid of that phone number at this point. So I might just end up keeping that. But again, that's something specific to us. But I know if you got a cell phone here, if you have the phone itself, you can look at a basic Telmex plan or Telcel plan is about 200 pesos a month. And just assume that you have Wi-Fi everywhere you go, so you don't need a crazy data plan. I think the basic 200 pesos a month data plan or phone plan is includes a gig or maybe 5 gigs worth. I can't really remember. I'll do a video on that coming soon because I will need a secondary phone number that's Mexican for signing up and getting deliveries and stuff. You do need a Mexican phone number. We obviously have our other life insurance policies and stuff, but that's separate. That's not really specific to everybody. That's just us. So overall, this is what our monthly cost was when we first moved to Mexico. And I would say that that's significantly less. Obviously, we don't have luxuries that we had back home in Canada, like our car and our car insurances and home insurance and all that stuff we didn't have. We didn't buy medical insurance yet. And the reason for that is because we're all pretty healthy. And if something were to happen, we would just pay for it since it's a lot less. Obviously, there are certain things that if you got a disease or if you got really sick, that would probably cost you a lot more money. But again, that's why we have our separate coverage for that stuff. So for us, we don't feel like we need to get medical insurance here just yet. It's not really applicable. And like I said, we have other coverage already for that stuff. So we don't need to double down on it. And it's just more efficient or economical to just pay as you go if you need it. And this is honestly true with everybody that I've talked to who's been living here for many, many years. A lot of them don't recommend getting that. Same with home insurance, oddly. I thought that would be something you should get, but everyone says like all the houses are concrete. The worst that happens here is a hurricane, and if you lose a window or two, it's significantly cheaper to just pay for that window than it is to pay the deductible and then pay the increase in premium and all that stuff. So houses are built completely different here in Mexico than they are in Canada or the US. You're not gonna lose your roof, you're not gonna break anything, like really it's just your window. If there is a flood, maybe, but I guess that's kind of depending where you are. If you live right by the ocean, I'd say probably get that. If you're like ground floor or 2 floors down or whatever, but if you're away from the beach, I don't know if flooding is really that big of an issue. That is basically our monthly expenses. So let me know what you think. Is that less or more than you thought? And that's just something to keep in mind. I can do a separate video later about what it actually costs to move here. Might be a little bit more than you think. But this is just general living expenses for the month if you're here renting, you don't have a car, and so on. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.